This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Please be seated.
Amen.
Jesus tells the lawyer, go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. Seems simple enough. But is it simple? Is it simple? Two red flags come up after listening to this particular gospel reading. One is that the lawyer went to test Jesus. And the other one is he wanted to justify himself. So the reason why he was testing Jesus is, it seems, that he wanted to justify himself. It's interesting, this lawyer, in this case, is one that knows the law. So he was probably a scribe, or was probably a Pharisee, more than likely. And it said that he wanted to test Jesus. During Jesus' temptation, Jesus tells Satan, do not put the Lord your God to the test.
Amen.
In another translation, it says that the lawyer brings a problem to Jesus that he has. And we know that Jesus is big enough to be tested. Jesus is big enough to bring your questions, to take your questions and to answer them. To sort them out, and certainly he does that with the lawyer in the reading. So why was he testing Jesus? Probably to justify maybe a prior conversation. We really don't know. And the conversation had to do with whether or not this person is your neighbor or not. Perhaps he had that discussion with someone. Now, I have great neighbors. One neighbor of mine has known me all my life. In fact, I went to their 60th wedding anniversary a week ago or so. And it was nice because all of their friends were there. And I was there, so it was nice. But they were responsible for bringing me to the church. Their son, to the Episcopal church, their son is the same age as I am. And he's married now. And so they had this dinner for their parents, he and his brother. So this particular couple have been great neighbors all my life. They never miss a holiday. I think about my impression of a good neighbor is that they bring something edible. And so that makes it easy if you have neighbors like that. Right? It's easy to love a neighbor like that. Because they're around, they know you. They knew your parents. You knew their parent. And their parents' parent. Those are great neighbors. But what if your neighbor is an enemy? What if your neighbor is someone that you have learned not to like or to associate with? And so the lawyer is saying, who is my neighbor? Is it the people that I know and love? Or is it somebody else, like the Samaritan? And so Jesus then gives this parable of the Samaritan. And they would have been a person of questionable theology, a person of questionable Jewish heritage. They would have been the enemy, if you will. And so Jesus uses the example. It's a surprising example because the parable is about this man who is going from Jerusalem to Jericho. And that would have been a treacherous route. That would have been a hard route. Because Jerusalem is 2,500 feet above sea level, and Jericho is 820 feet below sea level. So that's a very steep route or road of 18 miles, 17 or 18 miles. So what happens? You know the story. Robbers come, they beat the guy, they strip off his clothes, beat him, and leave him for dead. So you would think that in the story you have a priest and you have a Levite. The Levite would have been a lower level of clergy, but clergy nevertheless. What happens? They walk to the other side, or they pass by. They don't stop. And some believe that maybe they didn't stop just because if they had touched the person and they were dead, they would have been defiled. They would have been unclean. However, a very unlikely person, not just a lay person, but an enemy, goes and helps. It helps in a very generous way. It helps in such a way that I'm not sure if I would be able to do, most people wouldn't be able to do. Well, I don't carry wine and oil around in my car. But today, if I see a person that needs help, I may call for help. I may call for ambulance. And not only does this person help, the Samaritan help the person that's in need, is that he takes him to an inn and sets him up for 2 months. In today's money, that would have been at least $1,000 per son. Those people may not have $1,000 of extra money. However, that's not the point. That's what he does. He does this out of love. And the reason that Jesus answered the question is because he was asked, who is my neighbor? Who exactly is my neighbor? I was moved the other day by a graduation. I'm not often moved by a college graduation, but this college graduation had Mr. Rogers in it. Mr. Rogers was the speaker, and he was singing to this graduating class. In that graduating class, when they were young, many of them listened to or saw Mr. Rogers, and so they were all singing together, "It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood." Perhaps some of you know that song. I don't know. Most of you probably are familiar with that. But Mr. Rogers is describing a beautiful, idyllic type of neighborhood, full of neighbors. So it's easy to imagine that particular type of world. Kind of the AI world of artificial intelligence. But Jesus is describing, Jesus being AI in terms of the author of intelligence, if you will, is describing a world of love, where a person is compassionate and shows mercy. Amen. And says, go and do likewise. Not to test Jesus, not to test someone else, not to justify yourself, because we know that Paul says that you are justified by faith, not works. It's not about what you do or doing, it's about God working through you. It's about God. And so, for us, it may be impossible. That's why we need Jesus. But for God, nothing is impossible. So that's who we go to. And Jesus says, go and do likewise. Amen. Help your neighbor in some way that you can. Now today we can call an ambulance, we'd call for help, we'd call 911. They didn't have that back then, right? So showing mercy, showing that